The wind did not howl. It hunted. It clawed at Catherine Hale's face like something alive, something furious that she dared to move through its territory with two small children clinging to her body. Snow swallowed the road behind her. Snow erased the world ahead. And somewhere in the middle of that white nothing, Catherine realized something she had been refusing to admit for the past hour. They were no longer traveling. They were surviving. Mom. The voice was small, fragile. 8-year-old Leela pressed her face into Catherine's side, her fingers numb even through the worn sleeves of her coat. The driver, he won't wake up. Catherine didn't answer immediately. Because she already knew. She had known the moment the car drifted slightly off the road 10 minutes ago. Known when the heater went silent. Known when the man's breathing became nothing. Still. She forced herself to turn back. Forced herself to open the car door again. The wind hit her like a wall. Her boots sank into the snow up to her calves as she stumbled toward the front seat. The driver sat exactly as he had before. Hands on the wheel. Eyes open. Frozen in a position that almost looked peaceful if you ignored the unnatural stillness. Catherine pressed 2 fingers against his neck. Waited. Counted. Nothing. Is he dead? Leela's voice came again from behind her. This time, Catherine didn't soften the truth. Yes. No lies. Not anymore. She had stopped lying to her daughters the night they ran. Are we going to die too? That question. That one nearly broke her. But Catherine tightened her jaw. Turned back. And looked at the smaller child in her arms. 4-year-old Emma. Too still. Too quiet. Her lips faintly blue. No shivering. Catherine's heart dropped. Because she knew exactly what that meant. When the body stops shivering. It's no longer fighting. No, Catherine said. Her voice was calm. Too calm. We are not dying. Not tonight. She tore open the back door and grabbed the only bag they had left. Clothes, documents, nothing valuable. Nothing heavy. Everything disposable except the 2 lives she carried. We walked, she said. Leela stared at the endless white outside. That's not our road anymore. I know. Then how? Catherine crouched in front of her, gripping her shoulders. We follow the fence posts, one by one. She pointed into the storm. Barely visible shapes. Dark against white. Each one a marker. Each one a chance. If we stay, Catherine said quietly, your sister doesn't wake up. Leela looked at Emma. At her stillness. At her mother's face. Then, without another word, she picked up the bag. I'll carry it. Catherine almost collapsed right there. Because no 8-year-old should sound like that. Steady. Resolved. Prepared. The storm swallowed them whole. Each step felt like pushing through a wall. The cold burned their skin. The wind shoved at their bodies like hands trying to drag them backward. 1, 2, 3. Catherine counted each fence post under her breath. A rhythm. A promise. A reason to keep moving. Emma didn't move. Didn't speak. Didn't react when Catherine pressed her closer, skin to skin beneath her coat. Stay with me, Catherine whispered. Her voice trembling now. Stay with me, baby. Nothing. Then. Through the storm. A scent. Faint. Sharp. Smoke. Catherine froze. Lifted her head. And saw it. A flicker. A rectangle of golden light cutting through the white chaos. A window. A house. Hope didn't feel warm. It felt like desperation with direction. Catherine ran. Or tried to. Her legs stumbled. Her breath came sharp and uneven. Leela struggled beside her, but she didn't fall behind. Not once. When they reached the door, Catherine didn't knock politely. She hammered. Again. 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 The door opened. A man stood there. Tall. Still. Dressed in black like the storm had no right to touch him. A gun rested casually in his hand. Not raised. But not hidden. His eyes moved first. Sharp. Cold. Assessing. Who are you? He asked. His voice was low. Controlled. Dangerous. Catherine didn't bow. Didn't hesitate. Didn't explain. You posted for a housekeeper, she said. My name is Catherine Hale. My driver is dead on your road. My daughter is dying in my arms. She stepped forward. One step. Into his space. Into his world. I need your fire. Silence. The storm roared behind her. The child in her arms didn't move. Leela stood rigid, watching the man, not with fear. With calculation. The man looked at Catherine. Then at Emma. Then at Leela. His eyes changed. Just slightly. Because he recognized something. Not weakness. Not manipulation. Truth. You lied, he said. Yes. You said no children. I did. And yet here they are. Catherine met his gaze fully. If I told the truth, she said quietly, no one would open the door. Another silence. Longer this time. Heavier. The man Thomas Hale did not save people. That was not his reputation. That was not his nature. He destroyed problems. He eliminated threats. He did not take in strangers. But the child in her arms was dying. And Catherine was not begging. She was commanding survival. Thomas stepped back. Inside, he said. That was all. Catherine didn't thank him. Didn't hesitate. She moved past him like the storm was still chasing her. Straight to the fire. She dropped to her knees. Tore open Emma's coat. Buttons snapped. Fabric ripped. She didn't care. More wood, she said. Blankets. Warm water, not hot. If you have broth, bring it. Thomas stood still. For 1 second. 2. Then. He moved. Not as a boss. Not as a king. As a man following orders. The gun disappeared onto a nearby table. Wood hit the fire. Blankets were pulled from storage. Water tested before handed over. Broth placed on the stove. No questions. No hesitation. In the corner. Leela watched everything. Her eyes moved between the man. The gun. The exits. The distance between them. Calculating. Always calculating. Catherine pressed Emma against her chest. Skin to skin. Rubbing warmth into frozen limbs. Forcing life back into a body that was slipping away. Breathe, she whispered. Come back to me. Don't you dare leave me. Minutes passed. Heavy. Silent. Endless. Thomas stood near the fire. Watching. Not interfering. He had seen death. He had caused it. But he had never. Not once. Seen someone fight it like this. Not with skill. Not with precision. Not with refusal. Then. Emma coughed. A small sound. Barely there. But it was enough. Catherine froze. Then leaned closer. Again she whispered. Come on. Another breath. Shaky. Weak. Alive. Color returned slowly. A faint pink pushing through the blue. Catherine bowed her head. Not crying loudly. Not collapsing. Just breaking quietly. Thomas watched her. Something unfamiliar tightening in his chest. He spoke. Low. Careful. Who are you really? Catherine didn't look up. Didn't answer. Because survival came first. Truth could wait. And somewhere in that silence, power shifted. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But permanently. The most dangerous man in the region had just stepped back and listened to a woman the world would have ignored. Morning did not arrive gently. It crept in through the frost-lined windows, pale and quiet, as if afraid to disturb what had happened the night before. Catherine woke instantly. Not because she was rested, but because mothers like her no longer slept deeply. Her hand moved first. Searching. Finding. Emma. Warm. Breathing. Alive. Catherine closed her eyes for half a second. That was all she allowed herself. Half a second of relief. Beside her, Leela was already awake. Of course she was. He didn't sleep, Leela whispered. Catherine turned her head slightly. Who? Leela didn't need to answer. She tilted her chin toward the far end of the room. Thomas stood by the window. Exactly where he had been hours ago. Still. Watching the storm die. Or maybe watching something else entirely. Catherine studied him quietly. The broad shoulders. The stillness that wasn't calm but controlled. The kind of control that came from years of choosing when violence was necessary. He hadn't asked questions. Hadn't demanded explanations. Hadn't even checked their bags. That was not kindness. That was something far more dangerous. It meant he had already decided. They were not a threat. Or they were not worth worrying about. Both possibilities carried risk. Stay with your sister, Catherine murmured. Leela nodded. No argument. Catherine stood. Her body protested immediately. Every muscle stiff. Every nerve exhausted. But she ignored it. Because survival did not allow weakness to be felt. Only managed. She crossed the room slowly. Thomas didn't turn. Not until she stopped 2 steps behind him. You kept the fire going, she said. Yes. A pause. Why? Now he turned. Up close, his presence felt heavier. Not loud. Not aggressive. But absolute. Because if she got cold again, he said, you would not have stopped trying. Catherine held his gaze. That's correct. Another silence. Then. You're trained. Not a question. Catherine didn't deny it. Pediatric nurse. His eyes sharpened slightly. That explained everything. The precision. The commands. The refusal to panic. And now? He asked. Now I clean houses, she replied. That was not bitterness. That was fact. Thomas studied her longer this time. As if adjusting something in his mind. Reclassifying. People don't usually fall that far without reason, he said. Catherine met his eyes. They do, she said quietly. When someone makes sure they do. There it was. Not explanation. Not confession. But enough. Thomas didn't push further. Instead. You can stay, he said. Catherine blinked. Just once. For how long? She asked. Until I decide otherwise. Not generous. Not safe. But not rejection. Catherine nodded. That's acceptable. Thomas almost smiled. Almost. Because no one spoke to him like that. Not employees. Not partners. Not enemies. They negotiated. Or they obeyed. She did neither. And that interested him. Leela appeared in the doorway. Watching. Always watching. Is he letting us stay? She asked. Catherine didn't answer immediately. She looked at Thomas instead. He gave a single nod. Yes, Catherine said. Leela stepped fully into the room. Walked past her mother. Stopped in front of Thomas. You have guns, she said. Catherine's breath caught. But Thomas didn't react. Yes. You tell people what to do on the phone. Yes. You don't smile. A pause. Rarely. Leela nodded, as if confirming a theory. Then, if you hurt my mom, she said calmly, I will make sure someone hurts you back. Silence. Catherine stepped forward. Leela. No, Thomas said. He crouched slightly, lowering himself not in submission, but in acknowledgement. What's your name? He asked. Leela. Leela, he said, that's a reasonable plan. She studied him. Suspicious. But, he continued, you'll find it unnecessary. I don't trust that, she replied. His lips curved faintly. You shouldn't. That was the moment something shifted again. Not trust. Not yet. But recognition. Two people who understood the same rule. Trust is earned, not given. Later that morning, Catherine found the kitchen. Large. Organized. Unused. This was not a home. It was a place someone stayed in. She opened the cabinets. Everything stocked. Everything untouched. He didn't cook. Didn't live. Didn't belong to the space. Good. That meant she could. By the time Thomas entered again, the smell of food filled the air. He stopped in the doorway. Just slightly. You're working already? He asked. I'm staying, Catherine replied. I contribute. That wasn't part of the agreement. It is now. Again. That almost smile. He sat. Watched her move. Efficient. Quiet. Precise. Not servile. Capable. Leela and Emma sat at the table. Emma still silent. But her eyes. More aware now. Less distant. Catherine placed a bowl in front of Thomas. Eat, she said. No hesitation. No deference. An instruction. He obeyed. Because for the second time, he recognized something rare. Competence without fear. The disruption came that afternoon. It was not dramatic at first. Just a car. Pulling up too fast. Stopping too sharply. Leela noticed first. Of course she did. Someone's here, she said. Thomas was already standing. Already moving. By the time the door opened, he was there. 3 men stepped inside without invitation. Expensive suits. Polished shoes. Arrogance thick in the air. Thomas, one of them said. Didn't expect you to hide out here. Not employees. Equals. Or men who thought they were. Catherine stayed in the kitchen. But she listened. Always listening. You're late on your end, another said. We've been covering your silence for weeks. I didn't ask you to, Thomas replied. That's the problem. Tension. Sharp. Immediate. Then, one of them noticed. The children. Didn't know you were running a daycare now, he smirked. Catherine stepped forward. Before she thought. Before she measured risk. Watch your tone, she said. The room froze. Every eye turned to her. A housekeeper. A nobody. Interrupting men like them. You speak now? The man laughed. Catherine didn't flinch. You're standing in someone else's house, she said. You're raising your voice near children. Adjust. Silence. Thomas didn't move. Didn't interrupt. He watched. Listened. Because something in her voice was not fear. It was authority born from morality. You don't get to tell me, The man started. You're wrong, Catherine cut in. Not louder. Not aggressive. Just certain. You think power means no one corrects you. It doesn't. It means you should know better. The room shifted. Subtly. Dangerously. Because Thomas was not angry. He was considering. And when he finally spoke, she's right. Everything stopped. You come into my house, Thomas said calmly. You disrespect the space. You disrespect the children. A pause. And you forget who I am. The men went silent. Because now, power had chosen. And it had not chosen them. Catherine stepped back. Heart pounding. Only now realizing what she had done. But it was too late. The moment had already happened. The room had already changed. And Thomas was no longer underestimating her. The house did not return to normal after that moment. Because it had never been normal to begin with. Something had changed. Not in the walls. Not in the routines. In how Thomas looked at Catherine. Not as staff. Not as a temporary inconvenience. But as a variable. And in Thomas's world, variables were either eliminated or brought closer. That evening, the house felt quieter. But it was not peace. It was calculation. Catherine noticed it immediately. Because she was the same. She folded laundry in the sitting room while Emma drew beside the fire. Leila sat cross-legged on the floor, writing in a small notebook Thomas had given her 2 days ago. Observation log, he had called it. Leila took it seriously. Day 4, she muttered softly as she wrote. He listens when corrected. That's unusual. Catherine almost smiled. At the far end of the room, Thomas sat with a laptop open. But he wasn't working. He was watching her. Not constantly. Not obviously. But enough. Finally. He spoke. You interrupted a negotiation today. Catherine didn't look up. You were wrong, she said. A pause. You don't know what that meeting was about. I don't need to. Now she looked at him. If men who claim power cannot control their behavior in front of children, she said calmly, then whatever they're negotiating is already compromised. Silence. Thomas leaned back slightly, studying her. You think like someone who's dealt with systems, he said. I have. How? Catherine folded the last shirt. Placed it neatly. Healthcare, she said. Legal reports. Internal audits. Another pause. You were more than a nurse. Catherine didn't answer. That was answer enough. Later that night, Thomas called her into his study. Catherine didn't hesitate. But she didn't rush either. Control was everything. When she entered, the atmosphere was different. The door closed behind her. Soft. Final. On the desk. Documents. Financial reports. Contracts. Thomas stood beside them. Sit, he said. Not an order. An invitation disguised as one. Catherine sat. I want your opinion, he said. That was new. Catherine didn't react outwardly. But internally, she understood the significance. This was the midpoint beginning. Though neither of them named it yet. What kind of opinion? She asked. Honest. She nodded. Thomas pushed a file toward her. Read. Catherine opened it. At first glance. Numbers. Transfers. Subsidiaries. But within seconds, her expression changed. Because she saw it. Not the numbers. The pattern. 3 shell companies. Rotating funds. Small discrepancies. Consistent. Hidden. Not theft. Diversion. She closed the file. Someone inside your structure is moving money, she said. Thomas didn't react. Continue. It's designed not to trigger alerts, she said. Small amounts. Repeated. Clean enough to pass audits. She tapped one page. But they made a mistake. What mistake? They assumed no one would cross-reference the timing with external contracts. Thomas leaned forward slightly. And you did? Yes. Silence. Then. Who? He asked. Catherine shook her head. Not enough data. A pause. But it's not random, she added. It's strategic. How so? She met his eyes. They're preparing. For what? Catherine didn't hesitate. To challenge you. The room went still. Because in Thomas's world, that meant one thing. Betrayal. Thomas walked to the window. Hands behind his back. Everyone fears me, he said quietly. Catherine didn't respond immediately. Then. They fear what you do, she corrected. Not what you see. He turned. And what do you think I see? Catherine stood. Slowly. Not enough, she said. That should have been dangerous. But it wasn't, because Thomas paused. Then nodded. Stay involved, he said. That was it. No ceremony. No contract. But everything had changed. From that night on. Catherine was no longer invisible. Not fully. She began sitting in on discussions. Quietly. Listening. Men ignored her. At first. Until she spoke. And every time she did. Someone's argument collapsed. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just precisely. One evening. A senior associate named Victor slammed his hand on the table. This deal is solid, he insisted. We've run the numbers. You ran incomplete numbers, Catherine said. The room froze. Victor turned slowly. And you are? Someone who reads all the pages, she replied. Thomas didn't interrupt. Victor scoffed. Fine, go on. Catherine stepped forward. Opened the file. You calculated profit margins based on stable supply lines, she said. But this clause. She tapped the page. Allows unilateral price adjustment after 3 months. Victor frowned. That's standard. It's not standard when the supplier owns your distribution backup, Catherine said. Silence. Then. Victor flipped the pages. Faster now. His face changed. Dan. Thomas watched her. Not impressed. Certain. Later. In the hallway. He stopped her. You don't hesitate, he said. No. Why? Catherine looked at him. Because silence would be immoral. That answer stayed with him. Long after she walked away. But not everyone accepted her. And not everyone would. Because power does not like being corrected. Especially not by someone who wasn't supposed to matter. The danger revealed itself 3 nights later. It started small. A glass of water. Left near Thomas's usual chair. Catherine noticed it instantly. Not because of paranoia. Because of habit. She picked it up. Smelled it. Something faint. Bitter. Her eyes sharpened. Don't drink that. Thomas paused. What? That glass, she said. It's wrong. He didn't question. Didn't dismiss. He stopped. Looked at it. Then at her. Why? Because it doesn't belong here. Simple. Certain. Thomas nodded once. Call everyone, he said. Within minutes. The room filled. Every person present. Every ally. Every potential enemy. The glass sat in the center. Silent. Accusing. Who placed it? Thomas asked. No one answered. Of course they didn't. Catherine stepped forward. You won't get an answer like that, she said. Thomas looked at her. Then how? She turned slowly, scanning faces. Because the person who did it, she said, isn't afraid of you. Silence. That's the real problem. The room shifted again. Because fear was the foundation of Thomas's world. And someone had stopped fearing him. Catherine met his gaze. You don't have a loyalty problem, she said quietly. You have a succession problem. And just like that, the war became visible. Not outside. Inside. After the poisoned glass. Nothing in the house felt the same. Not the walls. Not the air. Not the people moving through it. Because suspicion had entered. And suspicion was far more dangerous than fear. Fear followed rules. Suspicion rewrote them. Thomas doubled security that night. Not visibly. Not loudly. But Catherine noticed. Of course she did. 2 new men stationed near the outer gate. A shift in patrol timing. Phones checked more frequently. Voices lower. He was closing the system. Tightening control. But Catherine knew that was not enough. Because whoever had placed that glass was already inside. She found Thomas in the study. He was standing in the dark again, looking out at nothing. Or maybe looking at something only he could see. You're locking doors, she said. Yes. You're doing it wrong. That got his attention. He turned slowly. Explain. Catherine stepped inside. Closed the door behind her. You're reacting, she said. That means they're already ahead. A pause. Then what should I do? He asked. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she walked to the desk. Picked up the same financial file. They're not trying to kill you yet, she said. Poison says otherwise. No, Catherine replied calmly. That was a test. Silence. They wanted to see if your system would catch it. And it didn't. Another pause. Thomas didn't argue. Didn't defend. Because she was right. They're measuring your weaknesses, she continued. And your reactions. What does that mean? It means, Catherine said, they're planning something bigger. Thomas studied her. Longer this time. Say it, he said. Catherine met his eyes. They're not trying to remove you. A beat. They're trying to replace you. The word settled heavily in the room. Because that was worse than death. Death ended power. Replacement stole it. Thomas walked slowly around the desk. And you think you can help me stop that? He asked. Catherine didn't hesitate. Yes. No arrogance. No hesitation. Just certainty. Why? He asked. That question mattered. More than any other. Catherine's voice softened slightly. Because if you fall, she said, the people who take your place won't have limits. A pause. And you do. That was the truth. Not admiration. Not loyalty. Assessment. Thomas exhaled slowly. You're asking to be involved deeper, he said. I'm stating that I already am, she replied. Another silence. Then, what do you want in return? Catherine didn't sit. Didn't soften. She stepped closer. My conditions. That word echoed. No one gave Thomas conditions. No one. Except her. Say them, he said. 1. Catherine began. No violence in this house. He didn't interrupt. 2. No business discussions in front of the children. A beat. 3. If this escalates, my daughters come first. Always. Her voice didn't waver. Over your deals. Over your alliances. Over everything. The room went still. Because she had just done something no one else dared. She had placed limits on power. Thomas looked at her. Long. Careful. You're asking me to choose, he said. Yes. Between them and everything else. Catherine didn't blink. Yes. Silence stretched. Because this was not a negotiation. This was a line. Finally. Thomas nodded. Done. Just like that. No bargaining. No argument. Because he had already made the decision. He just hadn't said it out loud yet. That night. The danger moved closer. Not loudly. Not obviously. Quietly. Like everything else in this war. Leela noticed first. Again. There's someone outside, she whispered. Catherine was already moving. Stay with your sister, she said. Leela nodded. But her eyes. Sharp. Alert. She was learning too fast. Catherine stepped into the hallway. Thomas was already there. Gun in hand. Silent. Focused. Back room, he said quietly. Catherine shook her head. No. He frowned. Catherine. If this is inside, she said. Then hiding doesn't solve it. He paused. Then lowered the gun slightly. Listening. A sound. A door. Not forced. Opened. Thomas moved first. Catherine followed. Not behind. Beside. They reached the corridor near the service entrance. And there. A man. Not one of Thomas's regular guards. Wrong posture. Wrong eyes. He froze when he saw them. Too late. Thomas raised the gun. Don't, Catherine said. That single word stopped him. The man bolted. Thomas moved to fire. Wait. Again. He stopped. Catherine ran forward. Not chasing. Observing. The door. The handle. The floor. Her eyes moved quickly. Then. She crouched. There, she said. A small device. Near the baseboard. Blinking. Thomas's expression darkened. Bug, he said. Catherine nodded. They're not just watching you, she said. A pause. They're mapping everything. Thomas exhaled slowly. Then looked at her. You saw that in seconds. Yes. Another silence. Then. You stay with me tomorrow, he said. Not a request. An acknowledgement. Catherine didn't argue. Fine. That was the moment. The true midpoint. She was no longer just inside his house. She was inside his world. Later that night. Emma sat quietly beside Thomas. Drawing. She handed him the paper. 4 figures. Holding hands. And in a corner. A dark shape. Watching. Thomas stared at it. What's that? He asked softly. Emma didn't speak. But she pointed. Outside. Catherine watched from the doorway. And understood something deeply unsettling. Children saw what adults ignored. And Emma had already seen the enemy. Catherine stepped closer. They're closer than you think, she said. Thomas didn't look away from the drawing. I know. But now. He wasn't facing it alone. Because the invisible woman had stepped fully into power. Not to control it, but to correct it. And that was far more dangerous. By morning, the house was no longer a home. It was a battlefield. Not one with guns drawn or blood spilled. but something more dangerous. Information. Thomas did not cancel his meeting. That alone told Catherine everything she needed to know. He wasn't retreating. He was drawing them out. Where is it? She asked as she entered the study. The main office, he said. Catherine nodded once. Then they'll act today. A pause. You're certain? Yes. She stepped closer. Because you've already shown weakness. His eyes narrowed slightly. Explain. You hesitated last night, she said. When you didn't fire. A beat. They'll interpret that as uncertainty. Thomas leaned against the desk. They're wrong. I know, Catherine said. Another pause. But they don't. That was enough. Come with me, he said. The drive into the city was silent. Not tense. Focused. Neela had tried to hide it. But Catherine saw the fear in her eyes when they left. Stay inside, Catherine had told her. Do not open the door for anyone. Leela nodded. I'll protect Emma. That should not have been a child's promise. But it was. The building rose ahead. Bless. Steel. Power disguised as legitimacy. Inside. Everything looked normal. Employees working. Phones ringing. Quiet conversations. But Catherine saw it. The way people looked away too quickly. The way conversations stopped when Thomas passed. Not fear. Expectation. They're ready, she said quietly. Thomas didn't answer. He already knew. The boardroom doors opened. And there they were. The same men from days before. Plus others. More polished. More composed. And at the center. Victor. The man who had argued the deal. The man who had been wrong. The man who had learned something that day. That Catherine was a problem. Thomas, Victor said smoothly. Glad you could join us. His eyes flicked briefly to Catherine. And your advisor. Catherine didn't react. But she noted the word. Advisor. That meant recognition. And resentment. Thomas took his seat. Catherine remained standing. Not behind him. Beside him. Let's begin, Victor said. Files were passed. Screens lit up. Numbers. Reports. Everything looked clean. Too clean. Catherine didn't sit. She watched. Listened. Waited. Victor began presenting. Growth projections. New expansions. Confidence. Controlled. But something was off. Catherine stepped forward. Stop. The room froze. Began. Victor smiled thinly. I'm in the middle of. You're presenting altered data, she said. Silence. Heavy. Immediate. Victor's smile didn't fade. Excuse me. Catherine moved to the screen. Tapped once. Quarter 3, she said. Projected gains don't match distribution capacity. A pause. Unless you're diverting supply. Murmurs. Victor leaned back. That's a serious accusation. It's a correct one. Thomas didn't speak. He watched. Prove it, Victor said. Catherine nodded. I already did. She pulled a folder from her bag. Placed it on the table. I reviewed your external contracts, she said. 3 shell companies. Rotating funds. Hidden allocations. She opened the file. Here. One by one. Pages turned. Faces changed. You've been siphoning resources, she continued. Building an independent network. A beat. And preparing to replace him. Silence exploded. Victor stood. That's speculation. No, Catherine cut in. Her voice didn't rise. But it carried. This is evidence. She slid the final document forward. Bank transfers. Signatures. Connections. Impossible to ignore. Victor's composure cracked. Just slightly. You think this changes anything? He said quietly. And there it was. The truth behind the truth. This was never about money, he continued. His eyes locked on Thomas. You've grown soft. No one moved. You disappeared, Victor said. You pulled back. You let outsiders influence decisions. A glance at Catherine. You became weak. Thomas stood slowly. The room seemed to shrink. And you decided to fix that? He asked. Victor smiled. Yes. There it was. Not denial. Not defense. Admission. Catherine stepped forward. You tested him, she said. The poison. Victor didn't deny that either. You wanted to see if he still had instinct, she continued. And when he didn't act. Victor finished it for her. I knew it was time. Silence. Then. Thomas spoke. Quiet. Controlled. Remove him. Two men stepped forward. Victor didn't resist. Didn't fight. Because he knew. It was over. As they dragged him out. He looked at Catherine. You don't belong here, he said. Catherine met his gaze. You're right, she said. A pause. I don't. And that was exactly why she had won. The room remained silent long after he was gone. Because something deeper had been exposed. Not just betrayal. But truth. Thomas turned to the others. Anyone else? He asked. No one spoke. No one moved. Because now. They understood. He had not grown weak. He had grown aware. And that was far more dangerous. Later. Outside the building. Catherine stood still. Breathing. Processing. Thomas approached. It's done, he said. No, she replied. He frowned slightly. This was the first layer, she said. A pause. They don't act alone. He looked at her. You're still thinking? Yes. Another silence. Then. What do you want? He asked. Catherine turned to him fully. Not power, she said. A beat. Change. Thomas studied her. Long. Carefully. You already have it, he said. Catherine shook her head. No, she said quietly. I have influence. A pause. Power still belongs to you. And for the first time, Thomas understood something clearly. Power was not what he thought it was. Because the person who had just saved his empire did not want it. And that changed everything. After the boardroom. After the exposure. After the quiet collapse of a man who believed power meant control. Everything changed. But not in the way Catherine expected. Because empires do not fall in a single moment. They adjust. And this one began to shift around her. The house felt different when they returned. Not safer. But clearer. Like something hidden had finally stepped into the light. Leela ran to the door the moment she heard the car. You're okay, she said, not as a question. Catherine knelt and held her tightly. We're okay. Emma stood behind her. Silent. But watching. Always watching. Thomas stood a few steps away. For once. He didn't move immediately. Didn't interrupt. Didn't command. He simply observed. The way Catherine held her daughters. The way Leela leaned into her. The way Emma stepped forward slowly. And then wrapped her arms around Catherine's waist. That moment was something Thomas had once lost. and never believed he would see again. Dinner that night was quiet. Not tense. Just full. Leela talked about something small. School. A book. Something ordinary. And for the first time, Thomas listened without distraction. Not thinking about threats. Not calculating outcomes. Just listening. Emma sat beside him. Drawing again. She slid a paper toward him. 4 figures. Holding hands. And this time, no shadow. Thomas stared at it. Longer than necessary. Then, carefully, he folded it once. And placed it in his pocket. Catherine noticed. Of course she did. Later that night, she found him outside, near the edge of the property, looking out into darkness that no longer felt empty. You're different, she said. He didn't turn. Yes. A pause. Because of what happened today. No. Now he turned. Because of you. Catherine didn't react immediately. She had heard gratitude before. Dependence. Even admiration. But this was something else. You disrupted everything, he said. A small breath. You walked into a world built on fear and corrected it. That world needed correcting, she replied. He stepped closer. Not invading. Not demanding. Just closing distance. You didn't ask for anything, he said. I did, she replied. His brow furrowed slightly. My conditions, she said. And there it was again. Not power. Principle. Thomas exhaled slowly. I've spent years building control, he said. And you showed me how little it meant. Catherine met his gaze. Control without integrity is instability, she said. A silence settled between them. Not uncomfortable, but heavy with understanding. Then, Thomas did something no one had ever seen him do. He stepped back. Not physically. Emotionally. I don't know how to be what you deserve, he said. There was no pride in it. No defense. Just truth. Catherine studied him. You don't need to be anything, she said. A pause. You need to choose. That word again. Choice. Thomas looked at her. For what? For who you become next, she said. Days passed. Then weeks. And something remarkable happened. The empire didn't collapse. It changed. Deals became cleaner. Decisions slower but stronger. Fear was no longer the only language spoken. Some people left. They couldn't adapt. Didn't want to. Others stayed. Because they saw something new. Something stable. And at the center of it was not just Thomas. It was Catherine. Not as a ruler. Not as a symbol. But as a standard. One evening, as the sun dipped low across the horizon, Thomas found her in the kitchen. Simple. Quiet. The place where she had started. You could have taken everything, he said. She didn't turn. I still could, he added. A pause. It's yours, if you want it. Catherine smiled faintly. Still facing the stove. I don't want your empire, she said. Now she turned. I want a life that doesn't depend on fear. He nodded slowly. And if I can build that? He asked. Catherine stepped closer. Then I'll decide if I stay, she said. No promise. No surrender. Just choice. That night, the house was quiet again. But not empty. Not guarded. Not tense. Peace. Earned. Leela slept without checking the door. Emma spoke a single word before bed. Good night. And Thomas stood in the doorway, watching. Then, slowly, He turned away. Not because he didn't care, but because for the first time, he trusted the world enough to let it exist without his control. Weeks later, they stood on the porch together. Catherine, Thomas, Leela, Emma. No contracts. No conditions spoken. Only presence. You stayed, Thomas said quietly. Catherine looked at him. No, she replied. A small pause. I chose to stay. And that was the difference. Final reflection. Power does not always announce itself. Sometimes it arrives quietly. Wearing ordinary clothes. Carrying responsibility instead of ambition. Catherine was never the strongest person in the room. But she was the one who spoke when silence became wrong. And in doing so, she changed everything. Because true power is not control. It is not fear. It is not dominance. It is the ability to choose what is right. Even when you stand alone. And sometimes, that is enough to make the most powerful man in the room. Listen. If this story moved you, stay with us, subscribe, and be part of more journeys where quiet strength changes everything.